In 1996, a Utah ranch owner told a local newspaper that he and his family were being harassed by UFOs. A Nevada millionaire named Robert Bigelow reads this article and then buys the ranch. Bigelow brings in a team of scientists to investigate. However, in the first few years after Bigelow purchased the ranch, no UFOs were seen or reported. And in 2004, Bigelow shut down his team's investigation due to a complete absence of paranormal activity. But the following year, in 2005, Hunt for the Skinwalker was published. Written by two Bigelow associates, the book claims the ranch was actually crawling with monsters, UFOs, and poltergeists. The stories are shocking and frightening, but they're just that, stories. The book contains no evidence to back up any of the paranormal claims, and one of the book's authors would later admit that there's no evidence.
If you're looking for physical evidence and solid proof, and they don't have it.
Then, in 2007, a scientist at the Defense Intelligence Agency read Hunt for the Skinwalker. He was captivated, and he believed the stories could actually be true. What happens is a scientist at the Defense Intelligence Agency named James Lakatsky reads this book. James Lakatsky at the DIA reads this book, is shocked, and he writes Robert Bigelow a letter. I, in my capacity as a DIA official, want to visit your ranch.
He goes to the ranch with Robert Bigelow and sees something himself, has an experience. He sees in the kitchen what I guess you could only describe as some sort of form, some shape, some weird, translucent kind of phenomena right in front of him, in the room. And even Robert Bigelow, the seasoned believer, or somebody who I think we'd all say, I want to believe, and does believe, he doesn't see it. But Lakatsky, the government, the intelligence community scientist, he says that he saw this thing, and the nearest estimate of what this thing looked like is if you look at the cover of the old Mike Oldfield album, Tubular Bells, a structure like that.
Now, Lakatsky goes back to DC. Bigelow, a longtime friend of Senator Harry Reid, a longtime friend and financial supporter of Senator Harry Reid, contacts Harry Reid and says, hey, this DIA guy is interested in the ranch. Reid then meets with James Lakatsky. Because of that meeting, it is decided that, Reid decides something needs to be done about this. We should investigate this officially. We should officially investigate the phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch. Working with Senator Reid, James Lakatsky would then write the scope and objectives of an official Pentagon program called the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, or AAWSAP. According to Reid, Lakatsky intentionally left out any mentions of UFOs, Skinwalker Ranch, or anything paranormal. Because of this, AAWSAP appeared to just be a normal aerospace technology program. Senator Reid acquired $22 million to fund the program. The AAWSAP contract was then put out in the public domain for solicitation. According to the law, any company could bid on it, and the company with the best proposal would win the contract. You would think military contractors, energy contractors, technology contractors would eat this up. It's millions of dollars. They want us to study technology or military stuff. Oh, we're perfect for that. We'll bid on that. Another company, oh, that's perfect for us. We'll bid on that. Energy company says that's perfect for us. We're going to bid on that. How many companies bid on this?
One company bid on that.
Who owned that company?
Robert Bigelow.
The OSAP contract and the $22 million was indeed awarded to the sole bidder, Robert Bigelow, and his new company, Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, or BASS. Supported by government money and a government contract, BASS would spend the next 2 years not just hunting UFOs around the world, but also chasing monsters and ghosts at Skinwalker Ranch. Much of this story has not been covered in the press, and there's a reason for that. For a full analysis of OSAP, BASS, and how the media has gotten the entire UFO story wrong, please watch our previous episode where we lay this all out. In this episode, we're going to focus on what BASS claims occurred at Skinwalker Ranch and how they conducted their OSAP investigations. For years, James Lakatsky, the Pentagon director of the OSAP program, remained a mystery. He did no interviews with the press. He released no statements. Then, in October 2021, he finally stepped out of the shadows to tell his story. Lakatsky teamed up with the authors of the first Skinwalker book, Colm Kelleher, the BASS project manager, and George Knapp, a journalist and close Bigelow associate. Together, they wrote and released a new book titled Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. They claim the book tells the true story of the Pentagon's OSAP program and reveals what $22 million of taxpayer money was spent on. In the new book, the same spooky things from the first book return. Werewolves, ghosts, Bigfoot, and of course, flying saucers. But this time, in the sequel, a new, sinister force arises. One of the most striking, jaw-dropping allegations they make about what happened at Skinwalker Ranch, this phenomena, is this malevolent, evil poltergeist that affects the health, affects people's health, their immune system, and attacks you. A poltergeist presence that follows people from the ranch to their homes in whatever state.
The hitchhiker.
The hitchhikers, they call them the hitchhiker, these hitchhiking poltergeists that follow you wherever you go and harm you. There's a story of a guy goes home from Skinwalker and it's attacking his son. It's affecting his wife. And they refer to it as an infectious agent. They refer to this poltergeist as like a pathogen, almost. And right here, infectious agent model. And then they bring up COVID-19. This is from the book. Just as the Wuhan Institute of Virology or the wet markets in China may have been the source of COVID-19, could Skinwalker Ranch be the source of an infectious agent? And they're comparing it to COVID. Nick, if you were to experience an outbreak of something's happening, there appears to be an outbreak of some sort, who are you contacting?
I'm calling the CDC.
I called the CDC. They don't know what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to Skinwalker. No one's ever picked up the phone and called the CDC. You call the CDC. You don't write a book for 1995. You don't write a book to say there's an infectious agent affecting the health of people. They're talking about infections, transmissible, outbreak. You don't call the CDC. You don't pick up the phone.
It's a perfectly legitimate point, and I agree with you on it. I think the COVID-19 analogy was unfortunate, to say the least. And yeah, I go back to my point. If there is data relating to some sort of pathogen, then write it up for a peer-reviewed medical journal. Or as you say, go to the CDC.
Call 911. If it's harming human beings, and literally in here, I went home and it hurt my son. If it is real, make it real. sound the alarms. The logic makes no sense. If outbreak equals call CDC is a very basic line of logic, and that apparently doesn't happen here.
No, it doesn't. And that is a big problem in terms of evidence. As I say, I think it's unfortunate. I think it's meant more as analogy. Some people go to the ranch and see nothing. Some people have an experience. Some people apparently take something back with them. But then you get into a whole nother debate about individual perception. Are some people, if there is a phenomenon, whatever the true nature of this phenomenon, are some people able to perceive it while others can't?
One thing's for sure, one group of people who are not able to perceive the phenomena are the readers of this book, which again contains no visual evidence to support any of these supposed paranormal encounters. Which is a shame, because the Skinwalker investigators say they had a variety of cameras with them when they stumbled upon the book's now most infamous cryptid monster, the Dino Beaver.
And they literally write in the book, we set out with all of our scientific gear, but especially our cameras. We took our cameras with us. And he literally writes, our sole purpose was to capture a visual. And then like a page later, they're like, and then the cryptid monster showed up. And then the cryptid monster showed up, and then they write about this thing, and they're like, oh my God. And then like the next page, they're like, oh God damn it, we forgot to take a picture.
Obviously, they were in shock.
The Skinwalker investigators described the creature as being the size of a large pig, with dinosaur-like spines on its back, and a very large flattened beaver tail. They say the monster was ambling towards them. Ambling means to walk at a slow pace. It's not like it zipped by them too fast. They say they had cameras, yet no one takes a photo?
These are the worst scientists in the world.
I'm not saying this
by the way.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is what happened, but I will just pull out from the UFO literature some reports which I have come across myself of UFO witnesses who literally have a camera around their neck, see a huge UFO up close and personal, and either because they are in shock or because, and this is deep conspiracy, but there is some sort of spooky extraterrestrial mind control device that prevents us taking good photos of them.
No, that's not true. That's not what's happening at all. And the difference is, Nick, is that these are a group of scientists who literally said, we went out expecting to see, we went out prepared to see, we went out with the goal to see and capture an image of this thing, and then they see it, and then they're like, God damn it, we forgot to get a picture.
If there is some sort of either extraterrestrial or phenomenological thing that means that witnesses are affected in some way, it's going to work on scientists too.
A week after the dinosaur beaver sighting, one of the same investigators encountered a gigantic bird that looked like an oversized owl, which literally attacked her car. The authors state the attack left scrapes and gouges in the paint of her car. No visual evidence of the scratched car is provided. A month later, the same investigator claims a poltergeist threw 2 wine bottles across a room, smashing them against a wall. No visual evidence of the broken bottles is provided. And later, the same investigator claims to have seen spooky orbs of light in her home and black shadow-like figures in her room. Again, no evidence. But how does one prove that? I mean, if you're a paranormal investigator and spooky events keep happening in your home, wouldn't you do what the people in Paranormal Activity did, which is set up cameras literally everywhere? But of course, this never happens, and the reader is provided with nothing but words on a page. And while the words and stories seem like a thrilling adventure, the stories not included in the book shed some light on what was going on behind the scenes. Researcher Mark Saccotti released this article featuring on-record statements from former employees who worked for Bigelow at Skinwalker. I also spoke to some of these sources, who worked as security officers and investigators at the ranch.
Their testimony is that Bigelow did not like asking them what happened today or what happened this week and hearing nothing or not much. He would get frustrated and angry. And these are people who are collecting a paycheck, this is their job. And the boss has established he's happy when weird stuff happens, and only when weird stuff happens. And so an exact quote from an ex-employee is, just tell him what he wants to hear. When he asks what happened, just tell him what he wants to hear.
I've certainly heard the skeptical argument that, if there is a billionaire funding research who believes in UFOs and the paranormal, you don't want to be the one who turns around and says to him, you know what, there's nothing here.
Yeah. You don't want to be the guy to tell the billionaire that he's wasting his money.
Because then he pulls the plug.
Right.
And you're out of a job.
Bigelow's headquarters was in Las Vegas, 400 miles from Skinwalker, and he would only rarely visit the ranch himself. Full-time workers at the ranch say they were supposed to fax daily reports to him, but according to those who worked at the ranch 24/7, a lot of those reports were embellished, or simply not true. They claim one individual, while drunk, would make up spooky stories and fax them to Bigelow. Stories such as witnessing a man turn into a wolf. We had a few people who tried to make stuff up in order to please Mr. Bigelow. I remember hearing rumors when I was first hired that a bonus would be given out if anyone provided actual evidence to an event. This, of course, created a problem. Yes, some people embellish stories. They never attempted to debunk anything, ever. They would see a goddamn raccoon and assume it's paranormal. Everything, and I mean everything, had a logical, rational, reasonable explanation that Mr. Bigelow just didn't want to hear about. This very questionable scientific investigation was not limited to those who worked at Skinwalker Ranch. In 2010, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, printed an announcement in their newsletter declaring a former collaboration between the university's nuclear materials group and Bass. Via Colm Kelleher, Bass would send various materials to the university, and Dr. Thomas Hartman would analyze them. In 2020, Dr. Hartman went on the record to researcher Mark Saccotti about what kinds of materials he was getting from Dr. Kelleher, and what it was that Dr. Kelleher was hoping to find. Dr. Hartman says Kelleher was looking for aliens. The basic idea of Colm Kelleher was to identify traces of alien life, so he provided us with some spheres, which turned out to be ion exchange beads, or a rock sample with traces of hydraulic fluid, which didn't turn out alien as well. Further, we analyzed some brown liquid in a plastic bottle, but it was just muddy water. I hope this provides some ideas about the level of research Mr. Kelleher was addressing us with. I agree that this is not much scientific.
So this is another insight into the level, in my opinion, amateur hour level of scientific rigidity at Skinwalker Ranch. A collection of random stuff, sending it pro bono to a science professor who then in turn delegates it to his students. They were analyzing these materials, and they were rocks, creek water, mud, pieces of burnt wood. But according to Colm Kelleher and those at Skinwalker, they thought it could be alien stuff from aliens.
In Colm Kelleher's defense, I would say, if he genuinely believes this is alien, isn't sending it for scientific analysis exactly the right thing to do?
To college students?
Now, well, you send it to a professor will often delegate to students. I mean, they're still following the same method. I don't think you can fault Colm Kelleher for saying, I think I found something interesting, I'll get some scientists to test it.
Muddy water, rocks, and burnt wood that you think, someone says, I think this might be alien. I'm looking for evidence of extraterrestrial origins here. Can you test this creek water? And I think it's couched in that mystique of Skinwalker. Yeah. If you are a believer in that already, that this is a hot spot for paranormal activity, you already have the notion that if you find something curious at the ranch, that it's going to have something paranormal to do with it. There is no doubt that Colm Kelleher already believes in the poltergeist stuff, in the wolf stuff, and all of this stuff. Why? Because he wrote books and he says so. Like, he believes it. And that, do you agree that preconceived beliefs could cloud your scientific ambitions?
Absolutely. And it's clear in many ways that this was a believer program set up by a believer faction. I don't think that's disputed, or if it is, it shouldn't be. If you look, you will find, particularly if you look with a believer mindset.
Dr. Hartman at the University of Nevada was not the only one not impressed by Bass. In 2009, the Pentagon determined the OSAP reports submitted by Bass were of limited value. The Pentagon pulled the program's funding, and by 2012, the program was officially dead. At this point, Robert Bigelow decided he was done with Skinwalker Ranch. On literally April Fool's Day in 2016, Bigelow sold the ranch to another real estate millionaire searching for the paranormal, Brandon Fugal. And while Bigelow was very secretive about the ranch and never allowed the public to see behind its gates, Fugal has brought in the History Channel to produce a reality TV show called The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch.
This is the most unique science project of its kind. Some of the most disturbing, unexplained events have occurred on this property.
That sounds exciting and maybe even a little bit scary, right?
Right.
Fugal claims he was once a skeptic of Skinwalker and didn't necessarily believe the spooky stories from the Bigelow days. But he says all this changed when he himself had a paranormal experience at the ranch. He now believes something is there, something real, something bizarre and extraordinary.
The reality of the anomalies that are occurring on the property really all combine to tell us that what we are dealing with at Skinwalker Ranch is absolute reality.
He is so confident that something otherworldly is occurring at the ranch that he has opened the gates to a very vocal skeptic and said, "Come to the ranch and see for yourself." I'm setting up camp in front of Homestead 2, which, according to the scientists and people who work here, is one of the most haunted places on the ranch. I just heard a thump. Oh, I can see it. What is that? I'm spending the entire night by myself at Skinwalker Ranch. Oh!